Ladies and gentlemen, let's Red Gaming Tech.com video. We're going to be discussing the future of consoles, at least according to the Ubisoft CEO. Many people have been under the notion that the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 and co. will mark the last of the traditional console. By the traditional console, I mean the one that sits in your living room and you put discs in it or you download the content, whatever, and there you have it. So in other words, very much like we've had since the Atari, very early Atari systems, all the way up, of course, to, say, the PS3 and, of course, the PS4, which is going to be released upon us soon. Instead, many analysts and many in the industry have been predicting this isn't the case. Instead, what's going to happen is that we're going to instead embrace a cloud-based technology. And, of course, we know what cloud-based technology is. If you're a regular viewer on the series, then obviously you'll know that that's basically that a server somewhere, a server farm somewhere, holds all of the data and that you simply connect to it. So it's almost like a controller with a really, really, really long-ass extension cable. However, this is not so, says the CEO of Ubisoft. Now, I'm probably going to get his name completely and utterly wrong, but I believe it's pronounced Yves Guillemot. That would be Y-V-E-S, Guillemot. Anyway, he was speaking in an interview, and he said that the PS4 and Xbox One will not mark the final saga in the last generation of home consoles. And his quote was as follows: "I still think it is not the last generation because manufacturers want a way to control their platforms and the machine is the best way to have specific access to this." He also stated, "I think the cloud is going to change a few things. Now with the cloud and the increased bandwidth, we should have the possibility to increase the quality of games a lot over the next few years. But I think 5 years is the right timing for it. If we can take advantage of the quality those machines bring, and if we can spend the money, then I think we can make business grow very fast." So what's he actually, end quote by the way, so what's he actually referring to about this whole 5-year situation? Well, basically, as many of you guys are aware, the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 have been out for far longer than 5 years. And as it turns out, as it comes down to it, 5 years to many is what they want to see in an industry, because they believe that, look, if a piece of hardware is out there for more than 5 years, if it's, say, out for 7 years, then what starts to happen is the quality of their games starts to diminish. In other words, the freedom to create new IP starts to become lower and lower and lower and lower. And you've got to remember that this is a simple fact, that hardware on the consoles just doesn't keep increasing. Now, some people are going to wax lyrically about the power of the cloud on, say, the Xbox One, and I've explained the cloud quite a bit. I've explained its negatives, I've explained how it works in a variety of different videos. And there are definite advantages to the Xbox cloud. Just for example, although whether the PlayStation is going to really utilize that, it's still an unknown quantity. One of them, of course, would be weather effects and AI and so on, and dedicated servers, and goodness knows what else. And the power of the cloud definitely makes these things cheaper. But, as I've discussed in a previous video, the problem with cloud is one thing: latency. Now, there are other issues with it as well that I don't like, that I'll go into just very briefly. I've really discussed these and hammered home with them previously. But one of the things I don't like, other than latency, 100 millisecond latency, not too bad if you're playing a game like Tomb Raider, and even then it could kind of suck if you're doing a really, really, really difficult jump. On the other hand, if you're playing like an action game like COD, another 100 milliseconds on the latency, not exactly what you want, either single player or multiplayer. Another issue I have with it, of course, and we've discussed this quite a lot on the Xbox situation, particularly on the always online DRM issues, that I don't like the fact that, look, if I pay for a game, if I pay for a service, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2 years, 5 years, how long are they going to support that service? And if you buy the game, of course, then theoretically you're at their mercy. On the other hand, if you rent the game, well, how long are you going to rent it? So that really turns it into a rental service, which I don't mind the principle of. But a lot of people are upset about this because of the very act of, what shall I say, the very act of actually owning a game, the collection. Now, we've spoken about this heavily before, and many people have been on the fence, are consoles going to go away anytime soon? it's a really, really, really difficult topic for me. Many people are also predicting the diminishing of PCs in the marketplace. And funnily enough, and this is going to be a separate video, but this is just a quick brief analysis of this. The PC, actually, the market share is actually starting to diminish in terms of sales, because we're starting to get the abundance of tablets and smartphones, and they're starting to basically take over the laptop. Time was that, say, 5 years ago, if you went to a business meeting, if you wanted to check your email, whatever, the real best way to do this on a very simple, easy level would be, I'm going to take my laptop with me. And laptops became progressively smaller and smaller and smaller, and of course we've got netbooks and so on. This isn't the case now. If I want to check my email, if I want to check my Facebook, if I want to go on a VoIP conversation or whatever, I can simply pull out my phone. And so, of course, PC sales have suffered because of that. However, it's also worth noting that PC software sales in terms of games is actually on the increase. And so I don't really think we've got anything to worry about for consoles or PCs. I'm going to really hammer on the PC issue in another video, mostly because I want to do a lot more research on it. I don't like to speak too much about something until I've done tons of research on it, but that's just my initial findings I thought I'd share with you. As for as for console, people continue to cite things such as, well, sales are starting to slow down on consoles. Come on now, as I've said before, you cannot take the Wii U as a sign of console sales slowing down, because, as it turns out, the Wii U is just not popular. It's not as successful as Nintendo have made it. And to be fair to Nintendo, they're not just saying, no, everything's fine, the situation's perfect and rosy and, splendid. They know that they screwed up. One of the issues with that is simple. That they did not place enough software on the machine. And why didn't they do that? Because apparently, according to them, it was the move to high definition. They said that they didn't realise the games were going to take that much longer to produce. And this has been another thing that I've actually said in a previous video. The games now are becoming increasingly more convoluted, complex, and downright difficult to not only bug test, which is a huge deal, but also, as it turns out, to produce. Similarly, how many people now are going to buy an Xbox 360 or PS3? Now, apparently, in the UK at least, the Xbox has dominated the sales. However, The Last of Us has done pretty damn well, of course, for the PlayStation, and apparently has stayed in a #1 spot for about 5 weeks in a row, which isn't really a surprise. I mean, the game is just phenomenal, and you can't really expect it to slip off. I mean, I'd have been somewhat shocked if it had dipped from the first, 3 weeks or so. I'd have been like, what the hell's going on here? And so it's kind of a situation where I think we're at this crossroads. I think the sales for the PS4 and Xbox One are going to be maybe somewhat lackluster to begin with from some people, because they're not really sure about the software. The problem is, if you're on quite a tight budget, then maybe at Christmas is not a good time to buy a PS4 Xbox One, simply because obviously the price is going to be high, the games are going to be artificially raised in price, as well as little issues such as, well, there's not going to be that many games. However, in a year from now, I still think the systems are going to start selling extremely well. And this has been historical. If you look at I remember the PlayStation 2 when it was first released, and I remember waltzing up to a local store. This is a true story. And I literally remember walking up there. I was quite young at the time. And I remember walking up there with all the money in my pocket, which probably wasn't that smart considering I was going up there alone. I was quite a young kid at the time. I can't remember the exact age, but I was pretty young. And I was walking back with PlayStation 2 all proudly in my bag. And then I had to go to a different shop, buy a couple of games. And as it turns out, I bought, a couple of games at launch. And I was still buying games for my PlayStation 1. I was playing them on the PS2. That was more to give myself comfort that I just splonked down 300 or whatever it was on the PS2. However, in reality, I was really playing PS1 games. I played a couple of PS2 games, of course, at and near launch, such as Tekken Tag and Devil May Cry and a couple of others. But reality of the matter is that most of my attention was going towards PC and, as it turns out, the PlayStation 1. But, of course, as time moves on, you start to forget about the PlayStation 1 games because you start to look at all the shiny new graphics, you start to look at all the new games that are being developed specifically for the next generation consoles, and you say to yourself, well, why should I buy them on the old console? I'll just, pick up this one. And this is how it goes. That's a natural cycle of things. It's something that really doesn't require me to explain to you guys. I'm sure that most of you have been around for at least one console generation. For example, let's assume that you started a game in the time of, say, the PS2, just as an example. And so, I don't really think I subscribe to the point of view of this is going to be the last generation of consoles, because the reality of the matter is, why would Nintendo, why would Sony, why would Microsoft just say, you know what, we're just going to relegate our services to the cloud? Because then it starts to become extremely uncomfortable for those developers and publishers. Now, obviously I haven't really thought about this huge amounts, but just as an aside, how would this work? Would they become services like Steam? I mean, and then of course you get little issues like, well, will new services like Origin start popping up? And then, of course, maybe you should just play them through PC. It doesn't really make sense. And there are so many different facets to this. There are so many different nuances. I don't think we're just going to see the end of it. I mean, this is one of the reasons that Microsoft are trying to push so hard for this, for the online gaming situation, for the downloads, because they want to be able to say, you know what, we've got this stuff implemented already for the future. But Microsoft themselves know that people are slow moving, and it's not just little issues like, okay, what about if I've got an absolute shoddy internet connection for the cloud gaming? It's also little issues like, look, I just want the system. It's the fact that developers and publishers want to be able to control their games better. And even stuff like, I don't know, the console itself. They make money long-term on the hardware. Short-term, of course, they do not, but long-term they do. I've already discussed many times that I'm not necessarily sure I hold the same level of optimism when it comes to other things such as, say, the Vita or the 3DS, in other words, handheld gaming, because, well, console, handheld phones and, PDAs and tablets and goodness knows what else are becoming increasingly powerful and convoluted. For example, I've mentioned this before, but Nvidia themselves are extremely confident that just within 1 to 2 generations, we're going to actually have devices that will be powerful enough to rival the PS3 and Xbox 360 in the palm of your hand. Now, that does come with some inherent problems, as it turns out. Why? Because of heat and power requirements. These are huge issues. Battery life. Just a very quick lesson. As it turns out, when new technology is released, the very bottom line is generally it requires more power. And so that's one of the reasons that a lot of the time, if you look at high-end graphics cards for PCs, you'll notice that they require 2 PCIe cables that go into them. We're talking the power connectors, as well as it turns out, a very healthy power supply. However, a couple of generations after that, a graphics card of the same caliber in terms of performance will basically require very little. In other words, a fraction of that power to get the same performance. Now, obviously, I'm very much simplifying that for the purposes of this video, but you get the idea of what I'm referring to. And this is, historical. So obviously, as they produce these various devices, as they become more refined, then definitely power and battery life is going to become less of an issue, especially as battery technology itself starts to improve. And so, I'm not saying, however, the PlayStation and Game Boy handheld devices are going to disappear overnight. I'm just saying that maybe I'm thinking their marketplace, their market share could start to diminish. On the other hand, who knows? I mean, technology and gaming is so crazy in terms of how things move that we just don't know that that's even going to be the case either. For all we know, and this is just, me being silly, but we could see, Android apps on the marketplace or, Apple apps on the marketplace where you can download and then, it allows you to play all the Nintendo games right there and then. And, you strap on a pair of analog sticks to your system. I'm, of course, being completely silly here and just, just saying it for the purpose of saying it, but you get the idea. You just don't really know where the direction of the marketplace is going. And the reality of the matter is as well, some people just like the dedicated handhelds. It's also a case of, look, if companies produce games for those systems, and those games sell extremely well, and the systems actually have a good library of games, people are going to still buy those systems. And honestly speaking, from the perspective of someone who has been gaming for a long time, I don't necessarily want the hardware to start going. You know, I agree with this guy that, you know, the cloud will change things. We're definitely going to start seeing the emergence of new technologies. We're going to start seeing much more persistent game worlds because, well, that just makes sense. I mean, imagine, I've said this before in a cloud video, but just imagine how awesome it would be if the land of Skyrim was living and breathing. I mean, that would be amazing. And by which I mean that, you know, obviously there would have to be some level of safety in there so that NPCs just don't fall over if you've not played in, say, 6 weeks' time. You know, in other words, someone takes an arrow to the face. But I'm talking about quest givers. But the reality of the matter is other things start shifting. You start seeing maybe political turmoil, or, you know, things are more dynamic. There may be, say, factions emerge. So let's say, you know, Bill's faction doesn't like Bob's faction, and maybe they go to war, but then Bob's faction wipes out Bill's faction, or maybe, you know, there's a huge war and they both, you know, say, you know what, we're stronger together, and Bob now is together, and they start taking on, you know, another faction. You get the idea. It would be extremely awesome. And this could just be from a single player experience, and it could, that sort of stuff I have absolutely no problems with on the cloud. But I think we're still a long ways through. I mean, gaming is still extremely early technologies. We're not even, you know, close to simulating real world in terms of graphical capabilities either. I've gone into this in a previous video anyway, so I'm not going to hark on too much onto it. But by the time that you actually start calculating physics, by the time you start calculating UI, by the time you start calculating graphics, we're, you know, a mere fraction of where we need to be. Literally a mere fraction. And so consoles have a long way to develop as well. I think we're going to start seeing a much better amalgamation of various technologies, however. So yeah, I mean, I personally completely agree. I don't think we're going to be seeing the PS4 and Xbox One as the, you know, sayonara to consoles. I think that we're going to continue to see them emerge and move forward. I think the same thing for PCs as well, because, well, it just makes sense to. I'm not saying that we're ever going to see consoles in the living room. I'm sure at some point that's not going to be the case. Maybe we just have a simple computer in the living room. Who the heck knows? That's, you know, that's me trying to predict the future in a, you know, how 1960s vision of the year 2000 was going to be like. And, you know, we all predicted that we were going to be driving hover cars at this point. I mean, you know, a really good example of this, and, you know, complete aside and, you know, just for laughs, but if you look at, say, Back to the Future, obviously it was somewhat of a parody of everything because it's supposed to be somewhat comedy, but many people expected at least some of that technology, and of course some of it has been there, like the whole being able to be faxed into your own home and video conferencing and all that sort of stuff on your television. That's certainly been there, but where the hell are my hoverboards? Where the hell are my flying cars, bro? So what I'm saying is that, you know, these massive predictions in the tectonic plates of time and gaming are just, you know, I don't really think we're going to start seeing the platform holders wanting to lose their stake in anything, really. It's a very difficult thing to predict, however, so who the hell knows? In 6 years' time, I may be sitting here and say, well, here's some humble pie, and I'll literally have like some pie and it will just say humble on it or something like that, and I'll just be eating it in front of you guys to make, you know, as kind of an apology. However, in reality, we don't know, but I don't think we're going to be seeing the end of it. I think we're going to see emergence of a lot better integration of technologies and worlds, maybe more cross-platform play as well. Who the heck knows on that respect, though? The problem is, of course, Sony don't necessarily want you to play with people who own an Xbox. Not that I blame them, of course, because they're two competing platforms. So it's really, really, really unknown. However, as I said, I'm going to be under the assumption that we're going to be seeing much better quality games. We're going to see the games improve. We're going to see much better technology. We're going to see much better integration with, well, everything, as it turns out. But I don't think we're going to be seeing the end of consoles anytime soon. So anyway, this has just been a rather strange discussion, I'm sure you'll agree, but nevertheless, hopefully you found it somewhat entertaining or enjoyable. Let me know your thoughts. As per normal, if you wish to drop a particular comment my way, best bet would be go to facebook.com/redgamingtech and say howdy doody. Regardless, I am going to get going. By the way, guys, as a very quick reminder, if you are a PC gamer, you have exactly 1 day to enter our competition to win 2 PC games. They're completely and utterly free. It is going to end on the 17th, which is tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly what time I'll be putting the competition announcement up in terms of the winner. It'll probably be about 6 or 7 p.m. UK time, which is basically when I get back from work and finished eating and all of that good stuff. But it will be up tomorrow. So just a little, reminder. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I will see you soon. Take care and bye for now.